Good morning, good afternoon or good evening. This is Miss Ferguson talking through on this video right here what the paper looks like for A level, and we are looking at component 3. Within this video I'm going to be going through the paper, not necessarily going through any answers as such in this one. However, I'll probably touch on that a little bit. However, I'm just going to be going through the paper, reading it through. This sort of video is good for if you are new to the paper, haven't looked at it yet, or equally I think it would be valuable as a revision resource, not in terms of necessarily getting any sort of detail down or any revising content as such, but in terms of calming yourself down, just reminding yourselves of the key areas and the key things that each section asks for. If you've got any things, it's a quick reference guide if anything. So, I'm going to be going through the paper shortly. I'm just going to be saying the setup in terms of what your expectations in terms of doing a paper for real and paper if you're doing it in terms of a practice, say at home. So if you're doing this paper, it is advisable to have a good set of pens and definitely a good sort of set of markers if you can, because those will come in useful in terms of keeping you focused on the question and also looking for the key areas, because this is a multi-use paper and in many ways it just keeps you focusing on the text you should be focusing on and keeping in terms of the key verbs in what is being asked. So you should, as good practice, should have a couple of polos with you in terms of doing your practice for your planning, the polo technique being one of our favourites in terms of it snapping on your tongue and that being the moment where you should stop planning, because it just gives you that good bit of thought time and prep time. And yeah, you should all be ready now. So this paper is one of the sample papers, one of the few we have at the moment in terms of this being a new specification still in its early years. And if you would like to download this is available on the Edexcel/Pearson website. So if you go to Pearson and you go to the A-level page, then you'll find assessment tab, and then you can find it in one of the downloadable PDFs, and it is known as one of the sample assessment materials, or SAMs for short. And you can download this and it will bring this up for you, and this gives you some typical things that you will see in the paper. So I'm going to start off in terms of saying that you should already, if you're in an exam situation, you should have found out your candidate number, etc., and where you're sitting. You should all have, for the real day, you'll have a double table, you'll have your polos, and you need to obviously ensure that when you're on the table that you've got all the materials you need in terms of the resource booklets, but we'll go into that a little bit more later. So this will be facing up to you. First of all, you need to ensure that you put in your surname, in any other names, and the centre number 31290, but that'll be on the board, or you can ask the invigilator if you don't know it, and your candidate number, which you will know by now. I would then just check that the paper is as it should be. It's not, for example, saying it's a geography paper or something example like of that. This is the advanced component 3 in theatre makers in practice, so talking about what theatre makers do in order to make impact. The paper's reference is 9DRO/03, and just saying here, because it's still sample assessment materials, that won't be there obviously on your paper, and it will tell you your total time of 2 hours and 30 minutes. It will then very clearly say to you that you must have a source booklet, which will be enclosed within the pack. I haven't got one on here with me today, but in terms of for the section B, so when it tells you you've got to work on the specific section for section B for our centre at the moment, Mackinac, that will be provided for you, and it will be a clean copy because it will be an unseen part of the play. And also you will need to take in your one performance text for section C, which for our centre at the moment is Hedda Gabler. to go through the instructions, I would then go through, just double check this is a good use of time in terms of, yes, you should be familiar with it, but it's good calming procedure just reading through this. So you start to remind yourself, have you got plenty of ink in your black ink or ballpoint pen? That's important because it shows up in terms of scanning. It mustn't be pencil and it mustn't be blue ink because it inhibits that process. Therefore, when they scan it and send it to the place in the country they do, you need it to be seen. You need to fill in the boxes at the top of this page. I've already done that. And it just reminds you that in section A, you choose one question, that you answer all questions in section B, and that in section C, you must choose one question. So don't go taking on more than you need to, just have that in your head, that that is what you need to do. It says that you need to answer the questions in the spaces provided, and there may be more space than you need. That's probably true. That is because one thing that I found out recently in the GCSE course is that they like to print exam booklets in multiples of 4. So sometimes the amount of paper that is printed in terms of the answer spaces doesn't necessarily indicate how much you should or shouldn't write. They tend to sort of over-exaggerate for the larger handwriting. But that's why, fun fact, you'll sometimes have the space that says this is a blank page. Do not write on this page. It's to spread it out for you. So, in terms of final bit of advice before you open the paper, it just advises that you should read each question carefully before you start to answer it. So many times that we see students, if they had just read and responded to what it is asking, not what they're thinking it's asking, in that heat of the moment, they could have saved themselves a lot of aggravation. So it says you to check your answers if you have time at the end. It is recommended that you spend 45 minutes on section A, 1 hour on section B, and 45 minutes on section C. So if that were me, say for example I started my exam at 12 o'clock, nice easy multiple there, I would, before I go in terms of reading any questions, I would quickly go to where it is. So if I'd started at 12 o'clock, I know that I've got to spend 45 minutes on section A, so I would write somewhere visible to me, perhaps on this page, perhaps somewhere here, exactly what time, but obviously not here because it tells you do not write here. Okay, and then I do the same for section B and C, just so I can discipline myself. That is one of my top tips in terms of making sure you stick to what it is recommending you to do. And that it will also give you time to plan and time to check. So, used to be that we would recommend you go backwards in terms of this paper. We're not going to do that anymore. It doesn't really seem to have any value in terms of how you approach this new specification. So, this, as we know, is the live theatre evaluation for section A, and it tells you that you must answer one of the following questions in this section with reference to a theatre performance you have seen. That you write your answer in the space provided. There is no space provided yet on this page, as you can see, and that you can choose one of these. Always in the paper, it will always have this statement here of analyse and evaluate the live performance you have seen in light of the following statement. Then it will give you the statement, and then it'll always just remind you that you've got to keep your answer including analysis and evaluation of key moments from the performance you have seen and the contribution made by different theatre makers. That is in terms of the production, so we're talking about the designers, the actors, the directors, etc., which you will have within your notes. And it reminds you that you should offer balanced consideration between analysis and evaluation of the performance and your response to the statement. So just reminding you that you should give equal weight to that in terms of how you treat your answer. I would recommend at this stage you then read through both of your statements. So I've already read the first one. In this one, it's theatre makers today rely too much on technology to impress audiences. If this were me, in terms of going through this now, I would try and list as many core arguments that would respond in terms of supporting this or disproving this statement. So I would, in terms of having question 1 here, question 2 here, don't need to necessarily write it all out, I would see how many arguments that I can fit within this perimeter here under here. So for example, live theatre has nothing to say to a young audience. I would think about whether or not this your production truly engaged them, and what sort of moments there were that did engage them. So first of all, I would put the key moments. So okay, and then I would think of a specific moment I can hook that onto. So it would be when they did this or when they did that. I'm talking broadly at the moment, so I keep this open in terms of a future revision resource. But hopefully, as I'm speaking over to you now, you might be able to start connecting and listing if you want to stop the video. I would do the same for question 2, and then I would consider with my gut which one am I going to go for. So which one have I got more arguments that are succinct to supporting or disproving, or a bit of both, this statement, something that's going to generate discussion and something that I'm going to be able to use the as rake checklist for. So in terms of making sure that I talk about a range of different supporting materials, my analysis, my key terms, my evaluation, and my acknowledgement of the question. And specific moments. So that is what essentially I've done within this here. Just plotting out, have I got enough of these? And hopefully later on, as soon as I form a few paragraphs, that will get my range of different examples through. And obviously I know that I must keep analysing, saying what it showed. My key terms must come through and evaluate in equal measure. Now over to section B. Once I've done this, just a quick reminder though that before I do this, you need to be absolutely certain of the title of the play you saw, the venue, and the date you saw it. It doesn't have to be the specific day, it can be month and year. I must indicate though which question I have gone for within the box in order to make sure, otherwise you'll give your marker a bit of a hard time trying to see if which argument you are arguing for, which hopefully you'll be keeping nice and focused to the argument. We've then got quite a few papers in which, if you want to do a plan on, that's absolutely fine, or you can use a planning space like I did, but if you're like me, I like to spread my plan out a little bit more. I like to do flow diagrams, I like to do mind mapping, and that's where I like to use my colours, etc. to keep me focused and keeping on those clear branches of the argument. If that is the case, you simply use some of these this sort of space here, and then stick a line through it, labelling it as plan for your marker. And just a reminder, this is 20 marks and it's for 45 minutes. Over to section B. So hopefully you'll have written the time you need to finish this as well. You've hopefully managed to keep to time with the other one. If not, you've got some catching up to do. Then, here we've got, in terms of page to stage, realising a performance text. And it asks you to answer both questions. So the performance texts are listed here, and you will notice that our current one here is labelled, so don't try and answer any of the others. It has happened. I know you wouldn't do that though. So, with our first question, here is a sample question. We're talking about, as a performer, outline how you would use movement to create impact on the audience in the portrayal of one character in this extract. Now this example here has got lots of lovely boldenings here. Hopefully that will happen in the one for real. And it just reminds you, it's in italics, but do read it. Your answer should make reference to the performance text as a whole. So although you are focusing on this extract that you are given, it wants you to remember to draw points as well from other areas within the play. This is for 18 marks. So we're looking at really about 30 minutes here. So within this, it is as much about answering what the question is asking you rather than what you know, in a way. So you must focus on performer. You can't start therefore talking about costume or use of design in terms of the broader sense, or lighting. That is a big no-no. So you're thinking about performance skills, but specifically movement before you jump in thinking, it's all about voice. So in which case you're thinking about things like gait, you're thinking about posture, levels. I'm happy to scribble on this paper, you don't necessarily have to. You could do though as a plan. Posture, levels, gestures, movement on the stage and within the space. And you should focus on one character if it's telling you to do that. Don't start talking about another character within it. And if you can, obviously it's telling you to back it up with what you know. So thinking about justifying why this is a good reason, because in terms of what is about to happen, or in terms of what's happened in the given circumstances before, or this foreshadows, you fill in those blanks there. Okay. So we've got all of our spaces here now, but we're going to go into the second part of section B. So we've had a nice acting question just before, we've now got a design question. So this one is asking you, as the designer, very specifically, outline how one theatrical element should be developed to create impact on the audience in this extract. So by theatrical elements we're talking about the things that break down into what makes a piece of drama. So you could talk about costume, you could talk about, in terms of costume, colour, layers, cut, fit, style, whether or not it's influenced by a specific practitioner there, etc. The sort of any sort of historical period influences, and that's just me off the top of my head here. In terms of another theatrical element, we might talk about lighting. So in terms of key terms here, we're talking about potentially using gels, Fresnels, spelt like Fresnel but with an S. Okay, it is French, you say it Fresnel. We're talking about maybe use of bandeaux, gobos, talking about floods, crossfades, strobes. But again, you need to talk about how it would develop to create an impact. So if you're saying this, why are you doing it, and for what reason, and why it's better than anything else that would get you your evaluation marks within this. I've considered this, however this would not create the impact that would create. This isn't your exclusive list of terminology here, but it gives you a start. Okay, You could also talk about set in terms of textures and things like that, but I'm going to move on from this now. Now, I'm going to go for the final section, section C. I'm just going to try and brush my little cat away before he tries to join in the video. And so for this final section, you are the director of a new production concept of the performance text you have studied. So this is your final one. It says to either, as a director, discuss how you would apply the methodologies of your chosen theatre practitioner to the acting styles used in your production concept. Your answer must focus on the named section listed above for your chosen performance text. So it will tell you it is Act 1, Scene, whatever, okay? And it will tell you to keep within that. You must do that, otherwise you're giving away marks. And it tells you that your answer must make reference to the overall aims of the production concept in response to the play as a whole, how your practical ideas will work in performance, and the original performance conditions of your chosen context. So that's quite compact in terms of the level of detail, but that is reflected in the marks, which is comforting to know. So it tells you exactly the head that you've got to work in terms of director. Believe it's going to be the same all the time. You'll always be asked to think of the director, and I suppose that's because the director has to think quite holistically about what he or she is trying to do, and in terms of what other impacts in terms of design are trying to do in terms of artistic intention, etc. So your teacher will have guided you a bit more on these areas, but I would recommend, again, make sure you have read both questions and you go with your gut. What can you write more about? Take the time to jot a few notes to yourself. It won't hurt, it doesn't waste time, and if anything, it's going to prepare your answer far better than if you go charging in and you panic. And that's it. I'm going to leave that there because that is my general tips today. Therefore, I'm going to make something a bit more specific as we go through the course. Please do come and see your drama teachers should you wish to know more.